Strangers in Time is a World War II historical novel set in 1944 during the Blitz in London. It follows the intertwined stories of two teenagers, Molly and Charley, and a bookshop owner named Ignatius Oliver. Together, they build a found family to help them survive the ravages of war. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. David Baldacci is a #1 best-selling author with more than 150 million copies sold worldwide. His books have also been adapted for television and movies. He's also the co-founder, along with his wife, of the Wish You Well Foundation, which we'll learn more about later. He joins us to talk about his historical novel, Strangers in Time. David, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Well, this is a standalone novel, so it's not drawing from any of the characters you've created in the past, and it's set in World War II. So tell us a bit more about the inspiration for this novel.
Well, World War II, I think, was probably the defining event for many generations, and it's sort of the sum total of human experience. It's, good versus evil and every personal experience on the spectrum in between. And I thought it was a good lesson to remember that the world has been through challenging, dark times before when it seemed like all hope was lost. And yet we still came together united, and we were able to get through at the other end, not totally unscathed. We were able to survive. So I think it's a good lesson that human beings are very resilient and bad times can be overcome. And it's just a really interesting, part of history as well. I think everyone should know more about it. I don't think it's taught as in-depth in schools as it used to be. So this novel is a way to sort of both entertain, but also give, I think, a very valid, important history lesson.
So this is in London during the Blitz. The bombs are falling, and three people find each other and help each other through this traumatic time. Tell us about those people and the plot that people are going to find in this book.
So there are three people, as you said. There's Charley Matters. He's a boy from the East End who really has almost nothing. He lives with his grandmother because his parents are both dead. Molly Wakefield lives in the very posh West End in Mayfair, Chelsea area. And she also has a lot of issues. She's just come back from the country where she was sent as part of the evacuation effort called Operation Pied Piper to avoid the bombs in London. And Ignatius Oliver lives roughly in between the two in the Strand, Covent Garden. He owns a bookstore. He's bereaved. He's a widower. His wife died during the war as well. All three of these people never would have met but for the war. Sometimes, as the saying goes, war makes strange bedfellows. And my idea here was to bring together three very different people from very different walks of life and classes of life back then, because it was very much a class structure back in England during that time period, so that they could come together and survive the war, at least have a shot at surviving the war. I don't think individually they could have done it, but the whole theme of this was sort of being united is much stronger. If you're going to go through really bad times, it's much better to go through them with people you care about and who care about you. Going through bad times in isolation is not good for human beings. We can take ourselves down many rabbit holes, and sometimes we have a very hard time getting back out of those holes. So it's really much about the human spirit, human resilience, and people coming together.
In this book, there were challenges, I'm sure, for you in terms of research to get things right for that time period, but also things like language, because Charley speaks in a different way, sort of a different dialect than the other characters do.
Yeah, he's definitely solidly in the Cockney region, so he's very discourteous to his G's and his H's. His grandmother sort of smoothed out the H's a little bit, but he still drops a lot of his G's, and that was a struggle too. A lot of people talk about Huckleberry Finn. I love Huckleberry Finn. I'm on the board of the Mark Twain House. I've been in Twainiac most of my life. Huck Finn is very much an apostrophe book where there's lots of contractions and colloquial terms, and it can be difficult to read just from a language point of view because people don't understand what the words mean because so many letters are missing. So I had a fine line, and I went back and forth with my editor about how much to do that. So we decided that Charley would, he would continue to drop his G's, he would hang on to his H's, but his friends that he worked with and played with and stole with during the time period Eddie and Lonzo, they would be sort of full out Cockney, where they were both the start and the end of their words. They would not be able to manage them with H's and G's. I didn't want to make it too difficult to read, but at the same time, I wanted to sort of still deliver on an authentic feel for the language there, because it's very important. The Cockney language is a renowned language, and it has really important manifestations and symbolisms too. So I didn't want to totally discount that. I wanted to honor it.
One thing about Charley, although he's hopefully not a spoiler, never published, he is a writer. He likes to write things down. And he comes into possession of a blank journal. And I understand that a blank journal also had a role in you creating this novel.
Yeah. So in Christmas, probably over 10 years ago, my wife gave me a journal, blank page journal. She's done that before. She did the same thing with A Calamity of Souls, another book I wrote set in the 1960s in Virginia. She gave me a blank page journal. I started writing A Calamity of Souls down on Christmas Day in 2011. I did the same thing with Strangers in Time. With that blank journal, I wrote probably the first 100 pages of that novel by hand. Again, you and I have talked about this. I think better in cursive. I like seeing the flow of the paper through the pen onto the page rather than typing in front of a computer. There's no buffer. It just comes out of my head as I want it to come out of my head. I'm not having to focus on whether I hit the wrong keys or not. So yeah, journals, and I continue to write longhand when it feels right, when I'm struggling through a difficult part of a book, because I can think better. I have more clarity of mind when I'm composing what I want to put down on the paper. And I always do the big edits longhand, where I print the paper out, I have it in front of me, I have my pens, and I just bloody the pages, because, again, that works best for me.
And for Charley, it worked because it gave him a place to put his thoughts and feelings that he couldn't always communicate otherwise.
A very important point for him. He needed that outlet. This little boy, he was 13, 14 years old during the course of the novel. He had been through more than most adults had been through. And for him, he needed an outlet to sort of pour forth what he was thinking. He wasn't all that well educated. He had to leave school for a variety of reasons early. He was an intelligent kid. He had a lot of street smarts, a lot of street cred. But the journal was an outlet. And I just think that, aside from the book, anyone can benefit from having a journal where they sit down and they write things out, complicated things out on pieces of paper that might allow them to think through these things a little bit better than just doing it all in your head. Words are very important to me. They're my whole world, really. And putting things down on a piece of paper, it's extraordinary, the clarity of thought that comes to you when you do that. It's just this symbiotic relationship between the mind and a writing instrument and a piece of paper. When you see it on the page, it's transformed into something that has great clarity, for me at least, and you can analyze it, look through it, and work through it. And I've solved many problems, not just books and plots and things like that, but many issues in my life just by writing them down and thinking them through.
Each of these characters have issues they're dealing with. I mean, in Charley, he was where the bombing started, and he lost his grandmother. He was orphaned, as you mentioned, the Pied Piper thing where she was away, but now she comes back to this devastation. And of course, there's the bookstore owner. So books play a role in this as well. But Oliver is dealing with tragedy. He just lost his wife. But there are deeper stories behind each of these characters.
I really, since it was a triumvirate of characters, the three people, I wanted them to each have their own backstories, their own mysteries and secrets and challenges in life. For Charley, it was because of his street life. Something really bad happened that he had to deal with. It was a guilty secret of his. It terrified him. He didn't want this outcome to happen. It just happened, but it was tearing him apart. Molly, her parents are in total disarray. Her mother's at a sanatorium. Her father has vanished. And Ignatius Oliver is carrying a very terrible secret having to do with his wife. And so those were all very deliberate subplots and backstories for each of these characters that in turn, the different arcs that you see throughout the novel, those stories are addressed intermittently as the story goes on. And then one by one, each of those arcs is finalized and finished and has a result at the end. I thought that was very important because having baggage like that in each of the characters' lives that they have to figure out helps me define and refine and clarify who these characters actually are. And you'll see each of them, all three of these characters, from the start of the book to the end of the book, you see that they have changed in many ways because the contents and the experiences they have in the book force them to grow and change in various ways. Oftentimes good, but sometimes also in bad ways as well, because, life is not easy, life is not simple, and we take the good times and the bad times. But each of those character arcs had a definitive purpose, and I ground that in the backstories that I built for each of them.
So here is the three people sort of found family in the midst of a very traumatic time in our history, but they helped each other out. And that was something about, I think, World War II that obviously we don't want to see that happen again, but there was a specialness about that time too, how people came together. And sometimes you wonder, the way the world is so divided now, would we see that thing happen today?
I would like to think that the answer to that would be yes. Not that I'm hoping a catastrophe occurs that people have to unite behind and fight back against, but I think it's just human nature. For instance, war takes away class, it takes away the influence and impact of wealth, and war is only interested in destroying things and people. So in this novel, Molly ordinarily would never have gone to the East End. She never would have met Charley. Those two classes did not mingle other than master and servant, basically. She lived in great affluence before the war, but then the war took much of that away. I think when you bring people down to the base levels where everybody pretty much has the same thing in life, not very much, and they have a common adversary, but they also have a common goal of just surviving the day, it tends to bring people together. I would like to think that, if something happened in this country, that people would unite behind that common cause, because I like to think that people in this country are good, they are caring, they look out for one another. When push comes to shove, they will be there helping their neighbor, helping their friend get through really bad times. If I didn't think that, I'd be a hopeless pessimist about what life going forward. But I tend to be an optimist. I would like to think that people would rally around each other and help each other, because I think human beings for the most part are good, and when pushed against the wall, I think they come back out united, not divided.
One of the takeaways for me from this novel is the impact we can have on other people's lives. That it may take many years for people to look back and realize, oh, because this person did this for me, it set me on this journey. Or they were there for me in a critical time, which made my life better. So I think that was part of what I felt good about this story that you've shared here.
I believe that when I was growing up and I wanted to become a writer, obviously, success didn't happen right away. And I had a lot of setbacks, a lot of frustration. Sometimes the words wouldn't come, the stories wouldn't come. I'd get rejection after rejection. And people along the way, mostly teachers that I had growing up in elementary school, high school, college, and law school, it seems like every time I hit a low point, there was someone there to help pick me up and encourage me and tell me, to sort of keep going, that I was good, I was getting better all the time, I was doing what I should be doing. And without that encouragement, maybe I would not have had the wherewithal to keep going, and I wouldn't be having an interview with you today about this brand new book. So I completely agree that the people you meet, I would say that another point of Strangers in Time that I really wanted to bring up is that your life depends on a variety of factors, and what happens in your life, it's not so much the decisions you make at certain points in your life that are important decisions. It's who is around you at the time that you're about to make those important decisions, because they're going to influence which way you're going to go in life. So sometimes it's very serendipitous about who's around you. In this book, all three of these characters, their being around one another is very serendipitous, because nothing was planned about this. They were there because they had to be there. This war tore everything apart, and they had to come together out of necessity to try to survive it. But I think each one of them had impact on the other, and bucked the others up, so that they would have that resilience and the wherewithal to sort of survive. So I totally agree with you. The people around you that give you encouragement and support during really critical times in your life, it can absolutely change the trajectory of your life, and you could turn out to be a totally different person because of that. That's pretty powerful impact.
And another thing I enjoyed about the book, and no spoilers here, but something people can look forward to, is that you do jump ahead at the end of the book, and you get to see some of that impact and how it played out. So that was a nice addition to the book as well.
Yeah, no, I thought that was important too. I mean, I wish I'd had more time to be able to talk a little bit more about that. Some of the emails we got was like, we want to know more about them in the future. And I said, look, the book was already over 400 pages. I had spent a lot of time in the 1940s, and I sort of had to wrap this up. But I did want to give a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of a glimpse of, what, because of what happened 40 years prior, things turned out okay. And it was a very positive experience moving forward because of these three people met when they did.
So what's next for you? What can fans look forward to seeing from David Baldacci ahead?
So in the fall, I have a brand new series starting. It's a 2-book series. It may be more, but right now it's 2 books. It's a guy named Walter Nash, and the name of the first book is Nash Falls. He's a businessman. He's an ordinary guy he's done really well in business, made a lot of money. He has a wife and a teenage daughter. He has no special skill set other than his business acumen. He's never fired a gun in anger. He's never lifted a weight. He's unlike a lot of my other characters, no special military skills or anything like that. His father was a Vietnam veteran, and the two men have been estranged most of their lives, even though they live in the same town. His father died from exposure to Agent Orange, and Walter Nash goes to the funeral. And his father's best friend growing up and also in Vietnam, his nickname is Shock, which you will learn about why in the novel, gives a eulogy at his father's funeral. And at that eulogy, he totally trashes Walter Nash in front of everyone. It's very embarrassing. And then Walter Nash goes home that night, and he's staring in his backyard, having a drink, looking out into a thunderstorm, trying to process all the stuff that has just happened to him. And an FBI agent suddenly shows up in his backyard and proceeds to really destroy Walter Nash's life. And he has to do things and become someone he never thought he would be able to become and never wanted to become. So that's the saga of Walter Nash. So you'll see the first book in the fall, and the second book, I wanted to have the second book very close to the fall book because it is a continuation, comes out in April of next year.
Well, David, before I let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the Wish You Well Foundation and the work you do through it.
Yeah, so the Wish You Well Foundation, my wife and I founded it over 20 years ago. We fund literacy programs and endeavors and initiatives across the country. We've given out a lot of money over the years, millions of dollars over the years. And we really stepped up our game during COVID because a lot of the other funding sources for these programs dried up. A lot of them were businesses and things, and people just stopped donating. So we gave a lot of money out. Our goal is to eradicate illiteracy in the U.S., and our goal is a worthy one because we can eradicate illiteracy. So many of the other social ills that are challenges to all of us will go away, like hunger and homelessness and poverty and crime, if you get rid of people who can't read at a high level. Because if you can't read at a high level, you're never going to be able to reach your potential. Your socioeconomic future will be bleak, and bad things will happen to everyone because of that. So literacy and reading skills are tied to how successful you're going to be in life. And more people read, more people are successful. A lot of the social ills we have will go away. And for me, that would be priceless. So I think everyone should get into the effort to fund literacy and make sure that people in this country can read at a high level because it will benefit all of us.
Well, people would like to learn more about the foundation. What's the address?
Yeah, they can go to wishyouwellfoundation.org to learn about what we do.
The novel is Strangers in Time by David Baldacci. David, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as always.
If you'd like to purchase Strangers in Time, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.